Inside a cave in a narrow canyon near Tasahara, the vault of rock is painted with hands, a multitude of hands in the twilight, a cloud of men's palms, no more, no other picture. There's no one to say whether the brown, shy, quiet people who are dead intended religion or magic, or made their tracings in the idleness of art. But over the division of years, these careful signs manual are now like a sealed message saying, look, we also were human. We had hands, not paws. All hail, you people with the cleverer hands, our supplanters in the beautiful country. Enjoy her a season, her beauty, and come down and be supplanted, for you also are human.
Poets speak to us best through the human voice, the instrument that touches us most deeply. They speak to us about the things that matter most, about love and hope, about struggle and delusion, about guilt and death, about man's feelings for the great patterns of nature, about the mysteries of life, and man's longings for God. It is the poet who gives shape and form to our vague and undefinable feelings, who can choose the right word, who has the magical power to make our dearest thoughts memorable. The poet can take the loose, sprawling stuff of life and tie up an experience you can hold in your hand and repeat to a friend.
Robinson Jeffers had the voice of a poet-prophet, but prophets are nearly always rejected in their own time, and no one understood this better than Jeffers himself. But today, his words have become those of the scientist, the ecologist, the urban planner.
Let the poet not be distracted by the present. His business is with the future. This isn't pleasantry, it's practical advice. In this way, his work will be sifted of what is transient and crumbling, the chaff of time and the stuff that require footnotes. Permanent things, or things forever renewed like the grass and human passions, are the materials for poetry. And whoever speaks across the gap of a 1,000 years will understand that he has to speak of permanent things, and rather clearly, too, or who would hear him?
Today, more and more are hearing and listening to this California poet. For it's just now that we are beginning to recognize the existence of some of those problems which tormented Jeffers half a century ago.
While this America settles in the mold of its vulgarity, heavily thickening to empire and protest, only a bubble in the molten mass pops and sighs out, and the mass hardens. I sadly smiling remember that the flower fades to make fruit, the fruit rots to make earth. Out of the mother, and through the spring exultances, ripeness and decadence, and home to the mother. You making haste on decay, not blameworthy. Life is good, be it stubbornly long or suddenly a mortal splendor. Meteors are not needed less than mountains. Shine, perishing republic. But for my children, I would have them keep their distance from the thickening center. Corruption never has been compulsory. When the cities lie at the monster's feet, there are left the mountains. And boys, be in nothing so moderate as in love of man, a clever servant, insufferable master. There's the trap that catches noblest spirits, that caught, they say, God when he walked on earth.
Robinson Jeffers identified himself with the storm-tossed surf and the stone cliffs of California's Big Sur, a minister's son who saw God in the towering coast range and the cold ocean swells, a man of the roaring, irresponsible 20s who found more of life's truth in the immutable laws of our universe than in society's frantic searchings. His own generation resented this aloofness, but a sympathetic critic of his time explained, Jeffers is in love with the universe, not with man, certainly not with the mob. Again and again he asserts that to love the austere or delicate outcrop of natural energy is to love God and to share his nature. But how can we reconcile our own demands for security and comfort with this idea? Today, not only poets, but scientists and political leaders are asking this same question. Many of us are troubled by this world we have made.
Then what is the answer? Not to be deluded by dreams. To know that great civilizations have broken down into violence and their tyrants come many times before. When open violence appears, to avoid it with honor or choose the least ugly faction, these evils are essential. To keep one's own integrity, be merciful and uncorrupted, not wish for evil, and not be duped by dreams of universal justice or happiness. These dreams will not be fulfilled. To know this, and to know that however ugly the parts appear, the whole remains beautiful. A severed hand is an ugly thing, and man dissevered from the earth and stars and his history, for contemplation or in fact, often appears atrociously ugly. Integrity and wholeness. The greatest beauty is organic wholeness, the wholeness of life and things, the divine beauty of the universe. Love that, not man apart from that, or else you will share man's pitiful confusions or drown in despair when his days darken.
Jeffers built his own answer into his life and into his home on a wide, lonely rock point at Carmel on the coast of Central California. The home he called Tor House. Behind these stone walls, built with his own hands, he wrote his volumes of striking, outspoken poetry over a 30-year span. Here with his wife, he brought up his twin sons, Garth and Donan. Donan, one of the twins, still lives at Tor House, and he's offered to share with us a few memories of his father.
I remember when my father was building these stone walls, he wanted a unicorn and a hawk carved in stone. He found an old man who made tombstones and asked him to carve the animals. My father's preoccupation with stone, with its degree of permanence, led to a favorite poem which he titled, To the Stonecutters.
Stonecutters fighting time with marble, you four defeated challengers of oblivion, eat cynical earnings, knowing rock splits records fall down, the square-limbed Roman letters skeel in the thaws, wear in the rain. The poet as well builds his monument mockingly. For man will be blotted out, the blithe earth die, the brave sun die blind and blackened to the heart. Yet stones have stood for 1,000 years, and pain thoughts found the honey of peace in old poems.
This tower, my father added this himself. He learned the art of stonemasonry from watching the builders put up the walls of the house. He was quite proud of this hawk tower, as he called it. He said in his poem called Tor House, "My fingers had the art to make stone love stone," and Tor House had meaning for him in the overall scheme of things.
If you should look for this place after a handful of lifetimes, perhaps of my planted forest a few may stand yet, dark-leaved Australians, or the coast cypress haggard with storm drift. But fire and the axe are devils. Look for foundations of sea-worn granite. My fingers have the art to make stone love stone. You'll find some remnant. But if you should look in your idleness after 10,000 years, it is the granite knoll on the granite and lava tongue in the midst of the bay by the mouth of the Carmel River Valley. These four will remain in the change of names. You will know it by the wild sea fragrance of wind, though the ocean may have climbed or retired a little. You will know it by the valley inland that our sun and our moon were born from before the poles changed, and Orion in December evenings was strung in the throat of the valley like a lamplighted bridge. Come in the morning, you will see white gulls weaving a dance over blue water, the wane of the moon, their dance companion, a ghost walking by daylight, but whiter and whiter than any bird in the world. My ghost you needn't look for. It is probably here, but a dark one, deep in the granite, not dancing on wind with the mad wings and the day moon.
It seems to me that the whole human race spends too much emotion on itself. The happiest and freest man is the scientist investigating nature, or the artist admiring it. The person who is interested in things that are not human, or if he is interested in human beings, let him regard them objectively as a very small part of the great music. Certainly humanity has claims on all of us. We can best fulfill them by keeping our emotional sanity, and this by seeing beyond and around the human race.
Jeffers spent the years from 1914 until his death in 1961 at Carmel. Many of his contemporary detractors claimed he was escaping from the world, but Jeffers believed he had found a real world. And in this world he lived, precisely as he advised others to live.
To be peered at and interviewed, to be pursued by idlers and autograph hunters and inquiring admirers would surely be a sad nuisance. And it's destructive, too, if you take it seriously. It destroys spontaneity, and it soils the springs of the mind. Whereas posthumous reputation could do you no harm at all, and is really the only kind worth considering.
Jeffers felt an affinity for all nature, but he identified most closely with that proud loner, the hawk. In one of his rare lecture tours with a stopover engagement at the University of Utah, he first discovered this hawk image in himself.
One of these lines took note of the gray air haunted with hawks. And as I looked over my things in preparation for this reading, it occurred to me that those birds of prey fly so often through my verses that hawk and falcon might be called, a characteristic theme in them. This is partly because there are so many in our mountains and so many kinds. Marsh hawk and redtail, Cooper's hawk, sparrow hawk, duck hawk. And partly because I nursed a broken-winged hawk once, and its savage individualism caught my fancy, producing these two pieces of verse that together were called Hurt Hawks.
The broken pillar of the wing sags from the clotted shoulder. The wing trails like a banner in defeat. No more to use the sky forever, but live with famine and pain a few days. Cat nor coyote will shorten the week of waiting for death. There is game without talons. He stands under the oak brush and waits the lame feet of salvation. At night he remembers freedom and flies in a dream. The dawns ruin it. He is strong, and pain is worse to the strong. Incapacity is worse. The curs of the day come and torment him at distance. No one but Death the Redeemer will humble that head, the intrepid readiness, the terrible eyes. The wild God of the world is sometimes merciful to those that ask mercy, not often to the arrogant. You do not know him, you communal people, or you have forgotten him. Intemperate and savage, the hawk remembers him. Beautiful and wild, the hawks and men that are dying remember him. I'd sooner accept the penalties, kill a man than a hawk. But the great red tail had nothing left but unable misery from the bone too shattered for mending, the wing that trailed under his talons when he moved. We had fed him 6 weeks. I gave him freedom. He wandered over the foreland hill and returned in the evening asking for death, not like a beggar, still-eyed with the old implacable arrogance. I gave him the lead gift in the twilight, and what fell was relaxed, owl downy, soft, feminine feathers. But what soared, the fierce rush, the night herons by the flooded river cried fear at its rising before it was quite unsheathed from reality.
I have no sympathy with the notion that the world owes a duty to poetry or any other art. Poetry is not a civilizer, rather the reverse. For great poetry appeals to the most primitive instincts. It's not necessarily a moralizer. It doesn't necessarily improve one's character. It doesn't even teach good manners. It's a beautiful work of nature, like an eagle or a high sunrise. You owe it no duty. If you like it, listen to it. And if not, let it alone.
Carl Sandburg once said, "Often I have the feeling that Jeffers is more than an equal of Balboa, for he too has discovered the Pacific Ocean. And to discover something as big as the Pacific Ocean, after others have already discovered it, requires eyesight and navigation ability requisite to the business of being a poet."
At the equinox, when the earth was veiled in a late rain, wreathed with wet poppies, waiting spring, the ocean swelled for a far storm and beat its boundary. The ground swell shook the beds of granite. I, gazing at the boundaries of granite and spray, the established sea marks, felt behind me mountain and plain, the immense breadth of the continent, and before me the mass and doubled stretch of water. And I said, "You yoke the Aleutian seal rocks with the lava and coral sowings that flower the south. Over your flood, the life that sought the sunrise faces ours that has followed the evening star. The long migrations made across you, and it is nothing to you. You have forgotten, Mother. You were much younger when we crawled out of the womb and lay in the sun's eye on the tide line. It was long and long ago. We've grown proud since then, and you have grown bitter. Life retains your mobile, soft, unquiet strength and envies hardness, the insolent quietness of stone. The tides are in our veins. We still mirror the stars. Life is your child. But there is in me, older and harder than life and more impartial, the eye that watched before there was an ocean, that watched you fill your beds out of the condensation of thin vapor and watched you change them, that saw you soft and violent, wear your boundaries down, eat rock, shift places with the continents. Mother, though my song's measure is like your surf beat's ancient rhythm, I never learned it of you. Before there was any water, there were tides of fire. Both our tones flow from the older fountain.
It takes a strong man to accept a strong God and the great forces and changes in the universe. Weak men flee to a protective God and lean on each other. They fail to see the wisdom in nature, and they mold the world in their own image.
Lately, I was looking from a night mountaintop on a wide city, the colored splendor, galaxies of light. I cannot tell you how beautiful the city appeared, and a little terrible. I thought, we have geared the machines and locked all together into interdependence. We've built the great cities, now there's no escape. We've gathered vast populations, incapable of free survival, insulated from the strong earth, each person in himself helpless, on all dependent. It would be better for men to be few and live far apart, where none could infect another. Then slowly the sanity of the field and mountain and the cold ocean and glittering stars might enter their minds.
That nova was a moderate star like our good sun. It stored no doubt a little more than it spent of heat and energy until the increasing tension came to the trigger point of a new chemistry. Then what was already flaming found a new manner of flaming 10,000-fold more brightly for a brief time. What was a pinpoint fleck on a sensitive plate at the great telescope's eyepiece now shouts down the deep night to the naked eye, a 9-day superstar. It is likely our moderate father, the sun, will sometime put off his nature for a similar glory. The earth would share it. These tall green trees would become a moment's torches and vanish. The oceans would explode into invisible steam. The ships and the great whales fall through them like flaming meteors into the emptied abysm. The 6-mile hollows of the Pacific seabed might smoke for a moment. And then the earth would be like the pale, proud moon. Nothing but vitrified sand and rock would be left on earth. This is a probable death passion for the sun's planets. We have no knowledge to assure us it may not happen at any moment of time. Meanwhile, the sun shines wisely and warm. Trees flutter green in the wind. Girls take their clothes off to bathe in the cold ocean or to hunt love. They stand laughing in the white foam. They have beautiful shoulders and thighs. They are beautiful animals. All life is beautiful. We cannot be sure of life for one moment. We can, by force and self-discipline, by many refusals and a few assertions, in the teeth of fortune, assure ourselves freedom and integrity in life and integrity in death. And we know that the enormous and vulnerable beauty of things is the face of God, to live gladly in its presence and die without grief or fear, knowing it survives us. Death's like a little gay child that runs the world around with the keys of salvation in his foolish fingers, lends them at random where they're not wanted, but often withholds them where most required. Oh, beautiful, capricious little savior, Death, the gay child with the gypsy eyes. To avoid you for a time, I think, is virtuous. To fear you is insane. On the little stone-girdled platform over the earth and the ocean, I seem to have stood a long time and watched the stars pass. They also shall perish, I believe. Here today, gone tomorrow, desperate wee galaxies scattering themselves and shining their substance away like a passionate thought. It is very well ordered.
I chose the bed downstairs by the sea window for a good deathbed when we built the house. It is ready, waiting, unused, unless by some guest in a 12-month who hardly suspects its latter purpose. I often regard it with neither dislike nor desire, rather with both, so equaled that they kill each other and a crystalline interest remains alone. We are safe to finish what we have to finish. And then it will sound rather like music when the patient demon behind the screen of sea, rock, and sky thumps with his staff and calls thrice, "Come, Jeffers."